this world, this nation serves as a land of opportunity. And the more opportunities one has, the higher their ceiling for success will be. But the big question is whether or not there are enough slices of the cake to go around. And the practical answer is no. For whatever reason, some people are rich, some people are poor, and some people are at some point in between. And today I'm going to be talking about only one of these levels. And some of you may have already guessed which one it is. Poverty. Poverty is a monstrous issue in the world today, and has been for quite some time now. But for our purposes, let's just concentrate our focus on the 50 states. Some people believe the reason poverty is so demeaning is because of how rampant it is throughout the pits of our nation. And yes, they are partially correct. The impoverished population is definitely higher than we'd like it to be. But the more important thing to point out is why this socioeconomical state is so rampant. To its core, poverty holds a cyclical nature, keeping generation after generation after generation of certain ethnic groups within its grasp. In a peer analysis simulation presented by neuroscientist Kimberly Noble, this sentiment was made evident. Now, some of you may have already heard this in Noble's own respective TED Talk, so I'll keep this brief. Picture two children, one from each extreme of the spectrum. At middle age, the child that spent their entire life in poverty was 75 times more likely to follow that trend for his or her life. 75 times, people. The same neighborhoods, communities, and families are suffering from poverty, and as it seems, they're essentially stuck, biologically and psychologically. So, for the reason that poor children hold limited access to resources, most don't have the tools necessary to develop the intangibles and the values to catch up with their wealthy counterparts. Going further, a top-down effect can be outlined to simplify this cyclical picture of poverty, as the financial struggles trickle down into the much-needed growth and development of their youth. From a study sponsored by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, it was shown that the perceived limits in a child's physical resources have a profound effect on that same child, limiting themselves mentally. And for myself personally growing up, my grandfather used to say that once you've lost up here, you've lost the entire battle. And for these kids especially, if they can't find it within themselves to see the bigger picture of life and define what's important, there's practically no other influential figure there to help them along the way. And sadly, it's no fault of their own. It's just their reality. In a piece published by the New York Academy of Sciences, Patrice Engel and Maureen Black shared this ideology. The convergent limits strapped down upon the younger impoverished demographic makes it that much harder for these kids to prioritize one major outlet, their education. And the fact that schooling is such a vital combatant of poverty, this should help us understand why it's so difficult to escape. So think about it this way. There's no amount of money that can be put on the table to provoke change amongst the true roots of this issue. Rather, as it is for many controversial debacles, it will take an idea, one more powerful and stronger than any piece of paper. This is what it's going to take to dissolve the cyclical hold of poverty from the inside out. Children need to learn that schooling is the best route to making it out. But most notably, many males and females, especially from the black decrepit neighborhoods in the US, hold the paradigm that revolves around sports as their way. And I mean, it makes sense because those are the role models that they look up to. But sharing the sentiment of ESPN personality Stephen A. Smith, not everyone can be Michael Jordan or LeBron James, but anyone and everyone can be Stephen A. This is why people like Stephen A., inspired minority figures that grittily built success from their own schooling, are the kinds of mentors that would have the biggest impact on enlightening the young minds of our minority ghettos. Now, I meant what I said about money not being the core answer to the problems that poverty poses, but at the same time, it still addresses other more surface effects seen amongst the older demographic of poor adults. To start, a common misconception amongst the majority of the population is that individual cash donations is the best method for relieving poor groups from their financial struggles. Understand this. No matter the magnitude of money that a generous benefactor or philanthropist puts forward, the most effective method of distribution is more indirect and lies on the shoulders of our government. Mirroring the ideas of Afoso Ajomo, senior researcher at Christensen Institute, uplifting the economy through the promotion of innovative ideals and entrepreneurship leads to one important mechanism for struggling poor parents: jobs, jobs, and more jobs. A famous saying relatively outlines my proposition here. You give a man a fish, and he'll eat for a day. But you teach a man to fish, and he'll eat for a lifetime. An underlying theme of what I've been talking about today is that individuals do not hold the key to the antivirus of poverty, but together, as a collective group, we do. Thus, although on a much smaller scale, I, amongst other community-conscious classmates, have undertaken steps to further alleviate a poverty-related aspect of a dilapidated space within the borders of Kaneohe town. To put it simply, Kaneohe is a small town on Oahu where the grass is always green, in the most literal sense possible. But don't be fooled, as it still has its fair share of abandoned, destitute areas. A particular place that my partners and I have pinpointed is a patch of overgrown greenery with a wall that once was home to a beautifully crafted mural of the Ko'olau Mountains, a prominent landmark of the east side. To be blunt, the mural's initial awe-inducing marks were disrespected by a random, mindless act of graffiti. Ultimately, this warranted a tan overcoat, which still stands today, to finish off the ugly, worn-down look of that abandoned piece of land. After a couple of months of jumping through legal hoops and such, my team and I are set to hit the ground running for our restoration project of this mural. As I firmly uttered, no individuals hold the ability to make a dent into counteracting the negative effects of poverty. Yet, given the constraints of our reach as 16 and 17-year-old high school students, the proportional difference that our project can hold is massive in our eyes. In this case, for us to be able to rectify the little things in impoverished environments, like that drab-pitted area in the heart of Kaneohe town, we will have done all that we can on a local level in regards to pinpointing an underdeveloped area and dedicating ourselves to its restoration. And all that has to be done, and the lengths that are to be stretched to combat the doom and gloom that poverty undoubtedly brings to the table, strong and steady efforts on a long path to a brighter tomorrow dims the dawn of this task. And to recite the resounding words of a closing quote from the critically acclaimed movie Tears of the Sun, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. We have what it takes for the realization of the suppression of poverty to be enacted. And all that's left to be done is to get to work. Thank you.